Good morning. Welcome to Hoops Brewing. It is Hoopla VII. It is Saturday. It's Brian Prudhomme. It's Dave Cook. We are live at Hoops Brewing. It's the Northland Sports Page. Once again, Brian Prudhomme, Dave Cook. Just a couple of aging guys who don't always know what they're talking about. Speaking of which, did anybody see the debate? A couple of aging guys who don't always know what they're talking about.
True.
Dave Cook, that kind of encapsulates what the country was put through earlier this week.
Yes, Brian. I agree with you on that.
Now, I can't always tell which candidate you're being when you do that because one ducks,
That's the idea.
One ducks the question, which you kind of did, and one mutters a response, which you also did.
What's your handicap in golf?
Oh, okay. So you specified.
As soon as I said it, I'm like, this is terrible.
Because I was about to shoot back with cerebral palsy without question. But at the same time, from a sports perspective,
yes,
what the debate certainly did, and we laugh when they're able to do this, especially for us, it did make the sport, and I use the air quotes on that, it did make the sport of golf interesting. A lot of people had that takeaway.
One of my coworkers said to me, CNN had some rules on these debates, and I would just wonder what your show would be like if it was, all right, you have 2 minutes to say something, 1 minute to respond, and next question.
Well, here's the big piece for this show that would be very interesting, and some people would probably love it. When one person speaks, the other person's mic gets muted because you and I are very conversational.
You never turn my mic
We
back
tend to
on.
clomp all over each other, and I'm probably more guilty of it than you are. But, yeah, it was certainly an interesting debate, so hopefully this will be a little bit better than that. I know you and I, when we talk about our history with the Northland Sports Page, which is almost up to 7 years now, 7 years coming up in November. We'll have more on 7 years in a moment because that has a lot to do with why we're here today. But you and I talk about how we're a little bit like Statler and Waldorf from the Muppets.
Yes.
The debate was a little bit like that, minus the humor and entertainment.
Yeah, that's correct. Two guys who really are older than us combined. Like
yes.
Each one of them, their age is more than our ages together. It's something. It's something, Brian, but we did this to ourselves. So let's move on to something else.
Absolutely. We are going to move on to basically 3 hours worth of us. We'll have Greg Grell's help at noon because 10 to noon, of course, each and every Saturday is the Northland Sports Page. Then noon to 1, it's Monster Weekend Kickoff. It is Duluth Harbor Monsters at home again tonight. They will take on a team that I can think you assume Ric Flair has something to do with because tonight they play the Iowa Woo.
Yeah, I love that name. That's like the, gosh, guys, we've got a team now. Are you excited? Woo! Oh, you know what? That's what we're going to name them. We're going to name them after the reaction you've got when we got our team.
It does make you wonder that they were super excited to have a franchise. And
I'm glad that they weren't owned by a person who didn't really want them, just wanted to be known. He was like, dang it.
I thought you meant it would be the Iowa Boo instead.
No, the Iowa whatever explicit you wanted to put in. So.
Yeah, they were thinking of, things to do with the team, and they said, everything looks good, we're excited, we just don't have a nickname yet, but darn it, we're going to play, woo! And they went, yep, that'll work.
Yeah, that does it, yep.
Some of the best things happen with conversation. We've got a crowd starting to file in. We encourage everybody to do that, as again, it's Hoopla VII here at Hoops Brewing. Jen is here. Jen is part of the illustrious staff here at Hoops Brewing, so now it's a day. When Jen is here, I can start. But I also got to give a shout-out to Brian. No, not me, but the staff here.
Oh.
Ingrid, too, treats us tremendously. Brian got me my beer today, so Jen didn't get a chance to put an umbrella in it. That's her favorite prank. You remember that.
I do, 100% I do. Here's the thing. The fact that you said, hey, I'm super excited, I want to give a heads up to Brian, I'm like, okay, and today's Saturday morning.
Right. So, just giving myself a little pat on the back.
Pat on the back.
Got to get myself motivated. But it's going to be a fun day because we're going to be talking sports for the next basically 3 hours, kind of a hodgepodge from 10 to noon like we always do. And then noon to 1, Harbor Monsters. Monster Weekend Kickoff goes from noon to 1. And again, tonight at just after 7, it will be the Harbor Monsters hosting the Iowa Woo. So hopefully we can pack the deck. If not, go ahead and pack Hoops Brewing because there are watch parties here. It's a good place to watch the game. And again, it's a party here all day because Hoopla VII, we'll talk to Dave Hoops later. It's a big deal.
It is a big deal. And one of the things you talk about is the relationship between the team and the business, right? Hoops business, Hoops Brewing is, the symbiotic relationship really has become quite the thing, especially after the game with the post-game party. And we're going to have them in here talking today. And the combination of the team and this brewery is really kind of cool.
Absolutely. We're proud to be part of that team as well because they're one of our illustrious sponsors. We've got a good team of those as well, do we not?
We do, Brian. It's really nice that, we have those sponsors that also take care of us as we're not necessarily always in the studio like today. I'll start with the Roll Architecture Studio. Mike Regan at Christensen Group Insurance. The Blackwoods Group, including their locations, Tavern on the Hill, Blackwater right downtown, on London Road, in Proctor and into Harbors. Mount Royal Bottle Shop, Stewart's Bike Sports and Trophies, Comfort Systems of Duluth, Kohler Toyota and Kohler Hyundai, Advantage Emblem and Screen Printing, Kraus Heating and Cooling, and Assisted Living Locators, www.assistedlivinglocators.com/Duluth.
Great lineup of sponsors. Very thankful for them. Great lineup of guests today as well. Very thankful for them as long as they get here. They're not here yet, but should be a fun day. 10:30, we'll have Kelly Grgas-Wheeler from UMD on. She'll talk a little bit about their Hall of Fame class. She can talk about anything because she played just about every sport, and she's got her finger on the pulse of all things UMD.
Well, and that's when you got to get a guest, Brian, get the right guest. And we got the right guest coming to talk about all things UMD because she's got her finger on the pulse.
I believe that's what I just said. She also took over for the legendary Bob Nygaard, which always was a difficult position that Bob was put in, but he handled it very, very well.
Did you just
so
say
she
that
knows
same stuff I did?
She's got difficult shoes to fill, but she's filled them admirably. No, I don't do that. That's your shtick. And then at 10:45, we will talk to Dave Hoops. May talk to him a little bit earlier because we just saw him come on in. He's got a busy day as part of Hoopla VII. Then at 5 after 11, I just can't get enough Daves today. I've got Dave Cook. I've got Dave Hoops. Let's add Dave Riles to the mix. He very well could be the proud papa of an NHL draftee by the end of the weekend.
Wouldn't that be something? I mean, more power to Dave Riles and his family. AJ's got a shot to be drafted today, and as a hockey player, as a little guy, isn't that the thing you always hope for? I want to play in the NHL. Well, to get drafted is a straight path to get there. It's not easy, but it's still a straight path to get there.
Absolutely. So A.J. Riles might be the A topic, pun intended, but Dave Riles is so big on St. Scholastica and Proctor, I wouldn't be surprised if he deflects a little and updates us on both of those.
Well, we're going to ask him. So, Dave, if you're listening now, have your St. Scholastica and Proctor takes, fresh and ready to go. And, it's not just A.J. Max Plant today is going to get drafted. In fact, he might be drafted.
It may
in the
happen
next
while we're
couple
on the air.
minutes,
We
right?
may be breaking news because the later rounds start at about 10:30 today. And so we could very well be on these airwaves and be able to tell you live where Max Plant ends up as a future NHLer. Should be a fun day for a lot of local kids, a lot of hockey fans. We'll talk, of course, about what took place in the NHL draft last night.
Yep.
Probably wait for Dave Hoops to get to that. I'm a little bit surprised with all the jerseys around the brewery that there's not a Celebrini jersey already hanging in here.
Well, I think you'll get that. I mean, they had 2 picks yesterday. Them and the Wild were considered the 2 big winners last night. So I would think Dave's got space for plenty more jerseys because he's going to have at least 1 new Wild jersey and 2 new San Jose jerseys. Celebrini's just one of the group. There's legitimately a chance in the next 3-4 years that he has to pick between those 2 teams in a Western Conference final.
We would like to see that, so it'll be interesting to see how rosters round out at the end of the draft today. Speaking of rounding out our roster, our last guest during the Northland Sports page today will be former Duluth Mayor Don Ness. He's going to join us. Should be kind of an interesting historical walk down memory lane for Duluth sports because Duluth, in my opinion, is a great sports town. If it wasn't, I probably wouldn't be doing a sports show in said town.
What would we be doing a show on?
We wouldn't.
Economics?
We wouldn't. We're not funny. We don't like politics enough. I don't think we would be doing a show.
The Northland Weather Page.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that would do that well in front of us. But I think talking to Don will be fun because as good of a sports town as I feel like Duluth is, teams that are not affiliated with schools, colleges, high schools, what have you, have not done particularly well. The Dukes, the Clydesdales, the Lumberjacks, the Huskies have been up and down like a roller coaster. It's been a struggle. The Huskies in their current form and the Harbor Monsters are hoping to turn that corner. I'm interested to talk to a former mayor on how we can do that as a community besides just come out and support.
Well, I think it should be a really interesting conversation because you and I have been neck deep in almost all of those teams,
yes,
one way or another. So together maybe we can come up with some solutions. I mean, I think that there are all kinds of good ideas, but to talk to the mayor about the things he experienced while being in charge of town and then having most of those teams, because don't forget he was mayor for quite a while, having most of those teams come and go during his one part or another of his terms.
So again, that's our lineup for today. And in terms of lineup, there's a big one here at Hoops Brewing because it is Hoopla VII. Hoopla is a fun term because it's one that obviously goes well with the name of the brewery here at Hoops Brewing, but it's something that you can talk about negatively or positively when it comes to sports because you can say it's basically another way to say hype. There's a lot of hoopla surrounding this player. There's a lot of hoopla surrounding this team. Sometimes it's well-deserved, and you're saying, let's go with the hoopla. This is fun. Let's make it a party as much as we can. Sometimes it's really not, and this is just a hype train that most people don't want to get on anymore. So when we talked about this for an opening topic, being that we're going to be here most of the day live at Hoopla at Hoops Brewing, we talked about this may morph into basically, Dave, a version of overrated versus underrated, but I think it merits some fun because we're tired of hearing some hoopla about some people currently. We're tired of hearing about some hoopla for people historically. But then there's also the other side of, hey, we didn't get loud enough and these people either deserve it currently or deserved it in their prime. So we're going to tackle that today, sport by sport, for the Big Four, MLB, NHL, NFL, NBA, as far as it relates to Minnesota. I think we could. If anybody's wondering, why don't you tackle the women's sports? We say the same thing every time. The Lynx don't fit our narrative. They're good. There's not enough to complain about. All the hoopla the Lynx get, they deserve. In fact, when Kelly Grgas-Wheeler gets here, I'm going to talk to her about the WNBA increase in fandom. But if I'm a Lynx fan or a Lynx personnel member, I'm not all that happy with it because it's all generated towards one player, not one of the best teams.
Correct. And this team right now, we always want to have a team that's great to follow, that's really got a chance to win, has a superstar that's the right kind of human being, and the Lynx are that again. We're talking about hoopla though, if we want to tie something quick into the Lynx. One of the hooplas that we got over really fast was Lindsay Whalen as the head coach of the Gophers.
We did. Because we were told to.
Yeah. Well, when she was put into that role, the hoopla of bringing back the ex-Gopher, the Olympic champion, the WNBA champion, the point guard of all point guards, bringing her home to get all these kids fired up to come back. We were fired up to have her come back. Like, we spent time on the show talking about what a great idea this is and spinning some of the hoopla, and then the way the wheels just went, woof.
Well, it's interesting because some of the best-known players don't make the best coaches, and we can talk about why. We can talk about, skill sets came too easy and they can't teach it necessarily. Hashtag JJ Redick, but we'll see.
Ted Williams.
That's one of the hoopla examples I think we could use, but we're going to use it towards Minnesota. So, Dave, I think the easiest way to do this is let's have you name the team. We'll have you guide us, be Will Steger here. And then we'll talk about currently and or historically who's got hoopla to the point where you're just nauseated by it and who deserves more.
Well, let's talk about the Wolves first, since we started with a little bit on the Lynx. Let's talk about the Wolves, and I want to just start with the new draft pick. Now, he hasn't had a chance to prove anything, right? But the hoopla around the Wolves getting this best offensive player in the NBA draft and how this guy is going to make such a difference. And when Conley goes, then they give all the dots and then says, yeah, but can't play a lick of defense. So he is super pumped up, and there's a lot of hoopla getting Dillingham here, but he is ripe for 4 years from now going, what was the big deal about him? He can't stop me.
Okay, so he's your choice for too much hoopla already.
Well,
we've had the guy for 3 days.
Right, it's the example.
Tough crowd.
Hard.
Tough crowd.
So the guy who got too much hoopla is Wiggins, right? Because he's, number one pick overall. We fleeced Cleveland. We got our guy. We had to take the other guy, the other first round pick. Once we did that, everybody was like, all right, the Wolves are ready to go. And we couldn't get him out of here fast enough.
I think Wiggins is a great choice for too much hoopla that never really measured up. I picked a guy who's kind of cut from the same ilk, and ironically, I believe he just signed an extension with his current team now. For me, it's D'Lo. We were pining for D'Angelo Russell year after year after year after year, and this is going to be so great when we get him. Him and Karl Anthony Towns are the best friends, and wait till you see this chemistry. This is going to be like Steph and KG reincarnate, only better. D'Lo loves D'Lo. The rest of us didn't. We didn't have to because he loved himself enough for all of us. D'Lo is a good point guard. He is a markedly inconsistent point guard, and we kept branding him as a star to carry the Timberwolves, and you just said it about Andrew Wiggins, and you were dead on. A guy you couldn't get out of here fast enough, and truthfully, the way they got him out of here turned out to be one of the shrewd moves the Wolves have made.
Yeah, we can get into the guy that doesn't get enough hoopla as the new the president of basketball operations for sure. But the thing about D'Lo, which is different than everybody else, is we practically held a parade when they picked him. Do you remember the huge
again because
event?
It was built up prior to
right, and from the draft. Like the Wolves were like, oh, if we could just get D'Angelo Russell when he came out of Ohio State, right? That's the guy we always wanted. And so you're right. When we got him, the big deal that was made, and he had a pretty good start to the Timber, and we were like, we got him. And
right.
Then,
when he was good, he was very good. When he was bad, he was very bad. So he becomes an overpriced middling player. Yeah. And now the Lakers can be blessed with that for as long as they apparently feel they want to. So I liked where you went with Tim Conley. Is he your choice for a guy that's not getting enough hoopla? Because we talk enough about Mark Laurie. We talk enough about Alex Rodriguez. We talk enough about Glenn Taylor. We can talk about Chris Finch. Spoiler alert, we will during buy or sell. Tim Conley is a great choice. Not where I went. Is that where you went? Because I think we conversed our way into another good choice.
Well, I think so, but I also think that we're on the cusp of the hoopla. Like, I think people are starting to say, well, look, he did this, and look, he did that. And
I think Minnesota's figuring it out. If you said his name in Denver, he's still got hoopla. Won him a title.
But if you said his name in Miami, they're going to say, yeah, wasn't he on the Carol Burnett show?
Well, if you said his name in Miami, Jimmy Butler's going to go, Minnesota, who needs him?
Right. Well, there's that as well. My favorite line of the week was, Miami's interested in Karl Anthony Towns. Right, but I can promise you Karl Anthony Towns isn't interested in Miami.
No doubt. So who doesn't get enough currently?
Yeah, actually, I think the name Karl Anthony Towns is probably a pretty decent one because when he was playing, right, they were unstoppable. But it wasn't, hey, Karl Anthony Towns has made a difference. It was still Anthony Edwards did this and Anthony Edwards did that. So I don't think he gets the credit, the hoop that he used to get. Right?
I appreciate the take. It's a very different narrative. I can't agree with it.
Finally, we got something
I can't
like
agree
that.
with it at all because I think with Karl Anthony Towns, you've gotten what you're going to get. I think you're right about maybe the hoopla surrounding him being inconsistent, but it shares that description with him.
Yeah, very true.
So I think you've got what you've got with Karl Anthony Towns. PA says it best, and one of our favorite local hockey minds will be just thrilled that I'm parroting something that PA already said, but PA says on an NBA championship team, odds are Karl Anthony Towns is a tremendous third option. I think that's right. So I don't necessarily think Cat doesn't get enough. I still think he probably gets a little too much, just not to a nauseating level anymore. My guy is Jaden that doesn't get enough. And we got into this, I won't call it an argument, but we got into this discussion last week and we talked about who's built to compete in the long run. And I had the Wolves fairly high. In fact, I had him number one with a bullet. And one of my biggest reasons was Jaden because of that coming out party in the postseason. Was it a little inconsistent? Yes.
Oh, he's terribly inconsistent.
But he's so young. The fact that you saw the peak, you got a peek at the peak. If you spell it out, you get what I'm saying. I think he's going to be a lot of fun to watch. But you're right. People talk about what are the Timberwolves made of. You're always going to get hype about Cat. Ant gets well-deserved hype. You've got the Rudy Gobert deal, Defensive Player of the Year, all that good stuff. If Jaden stays the fourth mentioned player at best, it's probably not fair to him, but they're probably going to be really, really good.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think that he doesn't get, and frankly, the difference that Conley's made, he probably, and I mean the Mike, not the Tim. I think that the difference he's made gets talked about, but I'm not sure it's made a big enough deal. I think some point in the next 10 years after he's retired, we're going to look back and say, Ant was great, Towns seemed to figure some things out, but Conley's the difference maker.
All right, we got to move because we spent a little too much time chiding the debate. Kelly Grgas-Wheeler will be here in about 10 minutes.
Oh, we got to be fast then.
So, historically, for the Wolves, who got too much and who didn't get enough?
Well, I'm going to say the guy that gets too much, and I liked him, is Googs. Like, Googs was a very good ball player, but we talk about him in the same breath as some of these other guys. And he was, like you said, he would be the fourth guy on a good team. And the other guy is Zerbiak, and I know you love Zerbiak.
I do.
But Zerbiak,
I'm just going to look away.
Zerbiak, to me, was a guy that people kept saying, wow, and it was like, I don't see it. Like, he's a 6'6" shooter who is hot and cold and not a great defender. And, yeah, he's ours, but he is the definition of a mid-major that had a good couple of runs, and they brought him in, and he just was a guy.
Who didn't get enough?
Who hasn't gotten enough on this team?
Historically.
Yeah, I know. The thing is we've been pretty good. Honestly, for as much as I get frustrated with him, it might be Joe Smith. Because Joe Smith did a nice job for the Timberwolves, and he's only seen as this drain on the franchise, which is also true.
But that wasn't on the court. That was pen to paper.
Right.
Or pen to whatever they used because it was under the table.
On the court, I don't think he got enough credit. The other guy is probably Pooh Richardson. Pooh Richardson didn't get enough hype because as the number one pick ever, he's still got that yoke to bear. And he wasn't fantastic, right? But he was still the guy on that team that made that team go, and he gets a lot of negative stuff.
All right, too much for me. I debated between two historical figures in Timberwolves lore. The first was Stephon Marbury, just because he was electric but don't blink. I think we talk about him as though he's this linchpin in the franchise makeup. what he played 2.5, 3 seasons.
Yeah,
it's too much too soon.
If you tell basketball people to pick a starting 5 for the Timberwolves all
He's
time,
probably on it.
Probably on it.
And
maybe not now with Ant, but he would have been.
And I get why, but holy, don't blink or you'll miss it. That's my theory with that.
Yep.
The other one I debated after Marbury was Kevin Love, because the team was so desperate to cling to a star. And Kevin Love was very good, the 2020 games, what have you, and the knuckle push-ups made him famous. But we just had him as this guy that we thought was going to carry a team. He just didn't seem to have that in him. He was not unlike Karl Anthony Towns. He went and won an NBA title as basically a third option. I think Kevin Love benefited from where he was playing. It may not be his fault. It may be the fact that Minnesota Timberwolves history has them as a laughingstock minus the last 5 years.
Yeah.
And then not getting enough. You went with Pooh Richardson late, and I like that you did that because I right away go to Tony Campbell. He gets plenty of hoopla on this show because we're older and we're sports nerds. But for so many people, because it's been long enough now, the Timberwolves franchise started with Kevin Garnett in their minds. That's not true. There was a good player on a really bad team. His name was Tony Campbell.
Yeah, there was, and he was one of those guys that didn't do anything special but score. Like, that guy could score. That we forgot the one guy that got too much hoopla, and he's probably one of my top 2 favorite Timberwolves, and that's Rubio.
JR? Oh.
No, Rubio got too much hoopla for what he turned out to be.
Fair enough. All right. That took a long time. We've only got one team down. We're going to go Speed Racer because Kelly Grgas-Wheeler is already here. She's prompt. We're going to go Speed Racer through 3 more teams. Where to first?
All right, let's go with the Twins. Let's talk about the guy that never really got enough publicity, and I know that he was
historic or current?
Historic.
Okay.
I know that he's in the Hall of Fame. I know that we talk about a lot of different players. The guy that doesn't get enough hoopla is Rod Carew. He's the guy that's overlooked. It's Oliva,
wow.
It's Puckett. It's
I guess
all
I
these
didn't
guys.
think of that narrative because retired Jersey, first ballot Hall of Famer. I realized his career was split between 2 locations.
But the hoopla has never really been there. He was a second baseman. He was the guy, right? That's not the point. The point isn't that he wasn't their best player. I'm saying that with the pomp and circumstance that's gone along with Puckett and even Herbeck and Oliva and Jack Morris gets more club than Crew. I don't think Crew gets enough hoopla.
Okay, so compared to that, because I didn't go legend by any stretch, it's going to seem like I went way off the beaten path because for me, we didn't give enough hoopla to Brian Harper because Joe Mauer is a first ballot Hall of Famer, and I'm not going to dispute that. We've done it enough. It's over. If you look at his average season with the Twins, I believe it was 306, 10 homers, and about 60 RBIs. Brian Harper's average season with the Twins, granted a little smaller sample size, was about 306, 8 homers, and probably 55 or so RBIs. They are not cut from the same mold. Nobody listening should go, can you believe he just said Brian Harper is just as good as Joe Mauer? No, I didn't. Completely different. Joe Mauer's on-base percentage would dwarf him.
Catching.
OPS would dwarf him. Throwing out base runners would dwarf him. All of that good stuff. But the way that we revere Joe Mauer is, can you believe a catcher hits 300 consistently? We had that way before him.
You bet. Absolutely. I think Harp's a good one.
Yeah.
I think Harp's a good one. I think Terry Steinbach's a good one. Also somebody that came in a little later in his career, but settled a position down before AJ that was kind of a mess.
So who historically got too much?
Oh, God, there's a lot of guys like that.
A lot of overrated Twins in the franchise history.
Well, but a lot of guys that got hoopla. John Smiley. John Smiley came in as the guy who was
I'm surprised to hear you say that, though, because we loved him, and he only stayed 1 season.
I still do, but he was considered the savior, and he left. Like, I mean, he got too much. He just didn't turn out to be that guy, right? Well, we can say Ron Davis because when we got him, he was the Yankee guy, right? He was coming in. He was the setup guy. He was going to be great as our closer. Yeah, that didn't work out so much. There's a lot of guys that we've given too much hoopla to.
All right, you're going to hate mine because I'm going Dan Gladden because he was absolutely a glue guy on 2 World Series teams. I get it. Tremendous leadoff hitter, catalyst, what have you. But he historically continues to get it because he's still in the organization somehow and horrific as a broadcaster, a member of the Hall of Fame. I don't know about that.
Twins Hall of Fame.
Understandable, but you talk about Hall of Very Good. Dan Gladden is the poster boy, even if it's just for the team to me.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. He was your glue guy, left fielder that came in just in time to win. He's going to get a little extra.
We would love it because it's so far outside the box, but we've pumped his proverbial tires enough.
What about Al Newman? Al Newman gets a lot.
I'm biased. I met him when I was in the
Oh.
Northwoods League, and he was a blast to be around.
No, he's not that he's not a great guy. But, I mean, let's face it. His skill as a baseball player was he was a good defensive player, and Kelly liked him.
All right, currently, there's a lot of options here. Who gets too much? It's easy for me. I'm so tired of hearing about Byron Buxton.
Guy, yeah, I love Buxton, but he has gotten too much. That's correct.
He's got a skill set that, when it's at its peak, is unbelievable.
Yeah.
But once out of every 20 ball games can't be enough to hype him as your superstar.
And yet you look at him, and he's got a WAR right now this year of 3, and which is
one of his higher outputs.
correct. But anyways, you're right. He's the guy that gets too much.
I think one of the Minnesota Twins' biggest problems is still touting him as a superstar. I get that marketing, who cares? Kids buy the jerseys. That's all we are concerned with. But it's funny to me the limited times that the Twins are on national TV. It's an indictment on the rest of the roster when they'll say, Mike Trout and the Angels, or, whomever, Aaron Judge and the Yankees take on Byron Buxton and the Twins. And I'm sitting here listing my top 5 Twins in terms of output currently, and Byron Buxton doesn't crack that list.
Sad thing is, the other guy that's in that stratosphere that has exactly the same problems, and that's Royce.
Yeah.
People say, oh, look, Royce Lewis. I mean, he's played just about as many games as Byron has in the last 2 years in the field.
All right,
so it's really tough.
Who currently is not getting enough?
Who's not getting enough? I think he's your guy. I think he's a 6'9" starting pitcher. I think it's Bailey Ober.
I love that take, and you're right. I probably would have said that, so I won't go with it to not do repeat radio. I have 2 guys offensively who I adore. Willie Castro is one, and Trevor Larnach is the other. And quite often they bat back-to-back in the lineup. Willie Castro, if people don't go just by name recognition, should probably be an all-star representative for the Twins, the way that he's done things at a myriad of positions. And Trevor Larnach, we called him up out of desperation because Matt Wallner couldn't figure it out. And Trevor Larnach just looks like a comfortable big league hitter, and nobody's kind of rejoicing that they found that.
It's interesting, specifically with Willie. Willie started out so bad. Like, it was like, last year was a mirage?
It was Craig Monroe 2.0. He ate us alive as a Tiger, so let's go get him.
And since his start, Brian, he's hitting like 308. Legitimately, if there was an all-star, if the Twins need an all-star player, who should it be? It might be Willie Castro.
We'll wait and see who they actually get. Meanwhile, we got to move along. We got 2 teams to go. Vikes and Wild. Our Wild coverage is not great.
No, it's not. But we do really good at hooplaing the Wild. I think the greatest hoopla guy ever is my guy. I think Vanek coming back was like a state party.
That's a good one.
And that might be the best. Like, I don't know if there's anybody else. Like, everybody else finishes a second to Vanek, and we can argue who's second.
For me, it's still Mikko Koivu, because we talk about people that get praised because they're compilers.
Yeah,
to me, that's
true.
what Mikko Koivu did. There was nary a stretch where they carried, their team to the promised land courtesy of Mikko Koivu. It just wasn't happening. Only in Minnesota, when you're destined to be middling, can you sing the praises of a second-line center that's fairly decent at faceoffs as your go-to.
Yeah, a defensive guy. He's a 200-foot player, Brian.
Who didn't get enough historically?
Okay, so this is going to be hard for me because I didn't like the guy. But it's Ryan Suter. Because Ryan Suter...
Apparently nobody likes the guy because he got bought out again, by the way.
For all the negativity and all the I'm going to run this team the way I see fit stuff, he was really good. Like, all the outside stuff that turned out to be a really negative thing, like he maybe have soured the room. Actually, it doesn't sound like it's a maybe. It sounds like he soured the room. But on the ice, man, he was good, Brian. And I think forever we're going to look at him as this, guy that kind of ruined the franchise. But on the ice, when he was playing, this was a significantly better team, but he gets no pump.
See, and I go a little bit weird here partly because of franchise reputation. We've had a lot of veterans who were big names somewhere, not necessarily here, but big names somewhere that just sort of come trundling through Minnesota. Maybe they make an impact, maybe they don't. I thought Pavel Demitra really did.
Yeah, no, Dimitra's a good one. In fact, they tried to sign him longer, if I remember right. And he just decided, no, he's going to do something else. Here's a question for you. As time goes on, is Gaborik in this conversation? Because he literally is forgotten. Until you say, who's the best Wild player, not Kaprizov, and you go, somebody in the back will say, what about Gaborik? And, oh, gosh, yeah, Gaborik.
Right.
But we forget about him.
Well, and I think that's generational, too. I think it's just a glimpse into just how old we're getting.
That's probably true.
Because we still think of
the guy without the helmet that plays.
Well, and here's the interesting stat that kind of goes along with that. I think, as a whole, we still think of the Wild in this relative infancy. They are almost equal to the amount of years the North Stars were here now.
Yeah, I know.
That really opens your eyes when you hear that.
It's crazy. The X is one of the oldest buildings in the NHL, and the team that's only been one team. All right, so we got to finish up with Vikes.
Currently, we got to go currently. Who gets too much and who gets too little with the Wild?
Currently? Gosh, I didn't even think about that too much. Who gets too much is my guy Favor, because he's had 1 year. Like, it's not that he didn't deserve the pump, but he's a rookie. Let's see what happens next year.
Too much for me is Boldy. It's inconsistent. The skill set is great, and I think it's going to come along nicely. But every time he scores, we've automatically got Kaprizov's Robin. Not every time. It may get there, it may not. Just wait for it to happen. For me, too little is still Eriksson Ek. For me, he's their best player. But in general, it's, you're not Kirill, and you're not, you're not one of the marquee scorers, so you're not a guy for us.
I'm going to take the easy way out of this, Brian. It is the state of hockey. I don't think there is a Wild player that doesn't get enough pub. Like, I think every one of the players that sets foot in a green uniform gets the, oh my gosh, he's a Minnesota Wild player. I know every single thing about him. He's going to be great. I don't think there's a guy that fits too much or that not enough hoopla.
All right, Vikes, we got to go quick. Too much currently, too little currently.
Too much bump currently is probably Addison, because all of a sudden Addison is like Randy Moss 2.0, and yep, he had a really good rookie year. Yeah, we talked about him when we drafted him. He's a footballaholic. He's also tiny and hasn't had a whole – I mean, now that Jefferson is going to be there, he's going to get a little less coverage, so he's going to put up a lot of other numbers. But I'm not sure he's anything more than a number 2. But we treat him different.
And I'm going to go in the same ilk, but slightly different position. Too much now is TJ Hawkinson. They're very quiet about when is he actually going to play. And I realize that he's a dynamic pass catcher, but you're touting your tight end because you don't know who wide receiver 3 is.
Yeah, no, and you are 100% correct on that last bit.
Right.
The reason he gets so much pump is they don't have anybody else.
Who's got too little right now?
There's so many guys on this because, honestly, it could be Phillips, the nose tackle, because their defensive line stinks, but it's not on him because he plays pretty well. It could be Cam Bynum. I'm not a Cam Bynum guy, but I'm going to go right now with Aaron Jones. We're not talking about him. I think he's going to make such a big difference.
Interesting, because I'm going to go the other way. I was going to say I still think Ty Chandler will be a difference maker, but everybody is obsessed with we got Aaron Jones.
Yeah, well, good. We think the running backs don't get enough.
There you go.
How about just that?
Historically, too much, too little.
Historically, too little and too much. So historically, too little in my mind is Warren Moon.
Probably.
Because Warren Moon came in and changed the direction of a franchise.
I'll borrow that to save time, and my too much is Jim McMahon. I think we got obsessed with the name and the persona, not necessarily the performance.
And I'm going to go with a guy I really liked, but gets way too much pub, and that's Klein Saucer. Let's be honest. We had a really cool local guy who played a unique position in a unique style, but he was just a tight end fullback mix.
It's not breaking news that hashtag one of us automatically makes somebody a big deal. Speaking of hashtag one of us, Kelly Grgas-Wheeler is here. She is one of us in a lot of ways. She's a Bulldog. She's a former Greyhound. She's missed everything when it comes to sports. I'm looking forward to talking to her. We will do that when we come back. It's the Northland Sports Page. We are live at Hoops Brewing. It's all part of Hoopla VII that goes all day. Stick around. We will be right back. And welcome back to the Northland Sports Page live at Hoops Brewing, all part of Hoopla VII. It is a busy, busy day here at the brewery. It's Brian Prudhomme. It's Dave Cook. Dave, people get sick of hearing from us, so we decided we'd bring a guest in for a little help.
Oh, 100%. Like, I think you and I get sick of hearing ourselves.
We do.
So
we do. Ask our headsets. They probably get really sick of it. But when I showed the show schedule to some people late last night, Dave Rylitz and Don Ness had a good time with the 11 o'clock hour, and they said, you got 2 class of 1992 Central Trojans in hour number 2. And I said, wait a minute. I'm a Greyhound. I got to bring one in. I easily found one. Kelly Grgas-Wheeler is with us, and do you want to be a Greyhound? Do you want to be a Bulldog? Or do you want to be all of those things? Today you could also be called a soccer coach, and good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for being here. So tell me, I guess, what title fits most right now? What's keeping you busy? Because school's out per se. I know that there are summer sessions, but what is your life like day to day right now?
Well, I'm not supposed to be a soccer coach anymore. I'm just finishing up Gitch. I got called back in to finish up this group of older kids that are basically going to be seniors in most of our local high schools or going to college this year. Me and Allison, a group from UWS, we're kind of tag teaming this group through July. But I'm done. I'm communications at UMD, working on men's hockey stuff right now, getting all of our freshman bios and stuff done because I'm going to do both hockeys this winter. Cool. It'll be quite interesting, but I think that the men have had interns the last 4 years, and I'm going to take that back over. So that's kind of what I've been doing this summer.
I was going to say, so is it the calm before the storm? Not to say that it's calm, but you've got a heck of a storm coming.
Yep. I'm going to try and take next week off.
So
we'll see.
Brian and I have talked a lot over time about thinking, we're getting ready for our next season and we're taking on all these things we've talked about. And when we're in the middle of it, we look back and say, in August, this sounded like a great idea. Are you thinking maybe in the middle of the season this year, you're going to go, boy, this sounds like a good idea in the summer, taking this all back on?
We had an intern this year, my first year being in the position, and I was at all the games anyway and had my hands in stuff. It's just really hard for an intern to do that.
Yeah.
I'm obviously pretty well versed in the men's hockey history. I know the staff really well, and I've been in it for so long. It's not a huge stretch. Obviously, I know I'm going to need help. I have a good student to help budget now, and
Sure.
Administration is aware, and both staffs, the women have to get theirs set, but CK and Scott, everybody knows, like, this is what's going to happen. I'm going to need your guys' help, and you're going to have to be patient, and those things are going to have to, ducks are going to have to line up, but I think that I need to do it, and it's got to be fair for both programs. They both need it, and so just revamping stuff. Our website's got to get cleaned up, and what we put out there has got to be better and the best. So that's what I'm going to try and do.
Very cool.
So, Kelly, by title, it's Director of Athletics, Communications, and Media Relations. And you just said in your last answer, speaking of being well-versed and being in it for a while, last time we talked to you, you hadn't been in this position very long at all. Do you feel like you have a little better grip on it now as time goes on? Or is it getting even more difficult because you're taking on more and more, like you just mentioned?
I know a lot more now. So I was really green. I knew what I was getting into, but now I know what we need. So I have a lot better understanding of what works and what does not work, and what makes my life easier, and what works for coaches and teams, and things we can do. And I just feel a lot better. And I was hired really in so late. It took so late for everything to kind of happen. Having a summer is really nice. Having, we've hired some student athletes that are helping do some things,
right,
which is really nice to have this summer. And they can do a lot of things that people weren't being able to do. We didn't have interns in place in the summer, and so I feel like also part of it is letting other people do stuff. Like people can update rosters and people can do things like that, and just knowing what can be given up and what I need to do, and that's it's just learning. That you don't have to do everything, but there's some things you absolutely have to do. So,
because one of the best delegating theories is just that. Being able to delegate is one of the best things you can learn. I want to talk about the Bulldogs do such a great job of honoring any connection to them, whether it be past or present. You said right before we took to the air, if I get a ping here that we've got a draft pick, I'll break it right on the show, and that may well happen. That kind of thing happens somewhat commonly. The PWHL championship, it was all about former Bulldogs in its own way. The Hall of Fame class was announced this week, and that really is a tribute to Bulldog athletic history. Let's start with that, because when I looked at it, I took it two different ways. I went, wow, this is cool. These are people I know really well. And I also went, wow, that means I'm getting a little bit older. because I know you know Josh Quigley very well. We all went to Duluth East together. He's on that list. Stacy Rubrick-Nelson was my very first analyst when I did UMD women's basketball on the radio. Ricky Fritz, who is the grandson of Bud Grant, he and I have some bar stories that we probably shouldn't share. Meanwhile, on the other end of the spectrum, I had Rick Costy's goalie stick hanging on my bedroom wall. I think I was 6. But this Hall of Fame class, they're all great, hence Hall of Famers. But this class is huge and pretty impactful.
Well, it was actually just really neat being on the backside of how, listening to the debate, and the people that were on the list and are, in the queue, so to speak, are just like mind-bending that some of these people aren't in. Like Rick, like, what the heck? How is he not in?
Actually, that was my first reaction when I looked at his picture. I thought, he wasn't in already?
Right. As a kid, he was like so legendary.
That was my guy, yeah.
Right. And so, any one of them is just like, that's kind of what I just think about UMD athletics, is that when you get those Hall of Fame classes, you're like, oh, of course, all these people, all of them. And even the ones I hadn't heard of, like a Sue Whirl or Dan Soldner, like, you look at their accomplishments and you're like, holy crap, like national champions, shot put, like, they're incredible, and that's kind of just the elite. You forget, because we just see it all the time.
Yep.
We see, like, these kids are going to be draft picks by the end of the day.
Yeah.
We see these kids do, or Kristen Danielson, who leaves with career home runs and strikeout records. It's just, we know them. Or Lauren
it's the assumed greatness.
Yeah, we just see it all the
really
time.
Is.
But when you step back and then you have all these years, and then you're like, well, gosh, we're just so used to seeing this greatness through UMD, and it just, those programs consistently attain that, and it's something to really marvel at, because how do you just keep having this level of programs year after year after year?
The ironic part to me was when you see people that are local get into a UMD Hall of Fame, I go backwards. I saw Josh Quigley on the list, and I texted Rhett McDonald, and I went, shouldn't we do something at Duluth East if he's getting into UMD's Hall of Fame, if we honored him at all? You know, that kind of thing. You realize how great they were for how long. Speaking of how great they were for how long, let's just talk about the PWHL championship, because Minnesota reigned supreme. I use that term because I still hope when they pick a nickname that it will be the Minnesota Purple Reign, REIGN. I think it just fits perfectly. But the whole playoffs, even outside of Minnesota, could have been a Bulldog or at the very least a WCHA roster. That had to be something great for you.
Yeah, I mean, actually, Minnesota doesn't have as many Bulldogs and has a lot of Gophers, so it's actually hard for me to cheer for them because there's other teams that have more Bulldogs.
Dave just sits quietly.
They have a lot of Gophers, so that one's a struggle for me. But it's great. I mean, that's just been really fun to see them on that side of it and hear their stories about these kids getting drafted, and now that's a conversation of those kids coming there. Their kid that's coming in, this Caitlin Kramer, is like elite of elite. Has the record for U18 goals. I mean, she's knocking out Canada's.
Right.
Like, some of these kids coming in, that's the conversation. You know, the conversation is, well, who will be drafted next year? That has changed so much. The men, that's been in their bloodlines forever. But the whole thing has changed, and it's so exciting to hear, you know, knowing that Manon was always in that conversation, knowing that Annika went to the Swedish league and knew she had a possibility. You know, Reese will do the same thing. That it's just an interesting conversation to watch these things behind the scenes. What speed will do, what size will do. The big kids are getting drafted. Just knowing that's changed that their futures and what they can do, it has been really fun to see behind the scenes.
We are talking with Kelly Grgas-Wheeler, University of Minnesota Duluth, Director of Athletics Communications and Media Relations. That is a mouthful, but I think I got it.
Yeah.
Speaking of the Gophers, let's let the resident Gopher fan chime back in. But all of you, I want to have a take on this. Where is your head right now if you're Natalie Darwitz? Because you've been through so much with the power struggle, with Coach Klee, with the unceremonious dismissal, but you won a championship. And then, oh, by the way, this week you're in the Hockey Hall of Fame class. We talk about riding a roller coaster in sports. Natalie's living one.
Yeah, I don't like it.
I agree.
I don't like it at all, and I don't like that they were behind her back, you know, figuring out draft picks. It doesn't even sound like the person they went with was who they originally were going to go with. I've seen it been, Natalie Darwitz is a great gopher for how hard that is for me to say.
I love the tone with which she says it. Gopher.
What a great gopher. And a great
she could have been in Caddyshack.
That's what she is.
Yeah, she is an ambassador to the game.
Ambassador. Yep. And, I've had to deal with her for a long time. She's been a coach, and I don't have an issue with her. I just think they did her dirty, and I don't think it's a good look for the organization.
Especially for a league so new.
And here's the thing. They don't have a GM, right?
No.
So they're owned by the league. All of them are. So this wasn't, we talk about like if it was the Wild. This isn't Bill Guerin
putting his foot
call,
down,
right?
yeah.
Right.
This is somebody who is in another area, who doesn't understand her impact, who doesn't understand everybody that's around hockey in this state. One, knows her name. Two, knows that she's driven. Yep. But here's the thing: if it was just another guy in hockey who was really driven, people would be tipping their hat, right? Because she is, so forward and so assertive. There's some people in another country, in another state, in another little town, making decisions that I agree they did her dirty,
and they won.
Right.
So
and that was the easy Minnesota joke. We don't get many championships around here. Now we don't even know how to win because drama unfolded right away.
Yeah, if they were cellar dwellers,
you get it.
Do what you do. But, they won. And I don't like that, there's specific players that were undercutting.
Yep.
I never like that. I don't think it's a good look. And there's a lot of questions that I don't like it. I also don't know that coaches, I don't love when coaches have complete control and stuff like that. I just think it's
monopolizes too many things.
I don't like it. And I really think they should have to answer for more than they have. She's been classy, and she's going to do her, what she does and not respond. But I don't think it's a good look for the organization.
Kelly, I really want your take on a different sport. Like I said at the top, you've worn so many hats athletically. Soccer, hockey, basketball is how I really know you. I mean, we've been friends for over 30 years. Good Lord, I think I just said that and realized what it means.
Yeah.
But Kelly Wheeler, basketball player, comes to my head first. So when I look at the growth of the WNBA, I think of players that I liked, and they must love this. But then I look at it, and I actually don't like it because it's the love for the league that is really just covered by the fact that everybody loves Caitlin Clark. If you're anybody other than Caitlin Clark, I get why you're not thrilled with this. And some people say, well, no wonder why this league doesn't grow or get successful. They try to downplay anything that they get. Not really. it's all about one player. All these fans that say, I love the WNBA now. No, you don't. You love Caitlin Clark, and you probably know Angel Reese now. What's your take on the WNBA's, in quotes, growth in popularity?
Yeah, I mean, anytime you have eyes on something, it's good.
It's good.
Right? I think I would argue, we talk about the NHL all the time, but NHL is not that popular outside of
right here.
Markets,
Yeah.
right?
The trick to Caitlin Clark is she's Wayne Gretzky. Because Gretzky is the reason that there's hockey in Southern California.
Right.
He's the reason there's hockey
I was going to say,
in Phoenix.
please know when I give my take, I have no ill will towards Caitlin Clark.
Right.
I just don't like when people go, I love the WNBA. I love women's basketball. How long have you been following it? 6 months. Because Caitlin Clark existed.
But we've heard that throughout time. I mean, what was the...
It does take somebody to get you interested. I get it.
What was the NBA before Magic, Bird, and Jordan?
So are
regional
Caitlin
league.
Clark and Angel Reese going to become Magic and Bird?
I mean, I think it's good because people are talking about it.
Yeah.
I think it's a lot on a kid. Okay, so Adam.
Do you have breaking news?
Yep.
Breaking news on the Northland Sports page. Go ahead.
So Adam Kleber, incoming freshman for UMD, was drafted by the Buffalo Sabres, second round, 42nd overall.
There we go. Another Bulldog to play for the Sabres, just like Mr. Derek Plant, who might be the father of a draftee later.
He is a 6'5", I'm just telling you off the top of my head, 6'5" defenseman coming out of Chaska. He played 1 year in high school. I think he was a sophomore. He just played a sophomore year. He was expected to go pretty high. So, Adam Kleber will be here in the fall.
Couple weeks.
Very impressive.
We're getting there.
Breaking news. We'll cut you loose here because I know you have a soccer game to coach here shortly, but I want you to round out your take on the WNBA. We cut it off for a good reason, but go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it's, you have eyes on it, so that's great. It's great for basketball, and I think women's sports is really in it, and you got to credit her for whatever it is. She's lightning in a bottle, and I watch Indiana Fever games now when they're on, and I'm one of those people that didn't watch the WNBA.
I was going to say, what happens if they stay bad? What if they're the Indiana Pacers or the Milwaukee Bucks pre-Giannis, where she's great, but they're an also-ran?
ESPN's going to make some suggestions.
Right.
Yeah, they're going to have to get some help. Oh, she already got me the graphic. So
her job is never done. Look at that.
they're
All right, I'm going to sneak in one last question. Which Wheeler or Grgas-Wheeler is more comfortable on a mic? Because I've had you and Kara a lot. Kara's doing the Olympic broadcasting bit. You both seem real comfortable doing this.
Oh, Kara for sure. I mean, she's up there with NBC.
But let's go with the easy question. Who would catch a ball thrown at her easier?
Never.
That's Kelly by a landslide.
Never Kara.
That's Kelly. That's Kendall. That's Patty. That's anybody else. That's Adam. That's everybody else.
Yep, no, Kara sucks at anything that's coordination.
There's breaking news right here on the Northland Sports page as well. I love you guys. You know I love the whole family. Thank you for doing this.
Of course.
All right. That is Kelly Grgas-Wheeler from the University of Minnesota Duluth. I love any segment we can get her. We got lots more segments to come. It's Hoopla at Hoops Brewing. Let's get Dave Hoops in here. We'll be right back. Back here on the Northland Sports page, live at Hoops Brewing. Brian Prudhomme, Dave Cook, and now the proprietor of Hoops Brewing, Dave Hoops, is here. Big day for the brewery. It's Hoopla VII. If you love the Roman numerals, it's Hoopla VII. Dave Hoops, congratulations on 7 big ones. Good day for the brewery. Big one.
Yes, good morning. It's a great sports day. It's a great Sunday, and it's a great day for the brewery. We've been in here. I've been in here for almost 9 years, but it took about a year and a half to build this place and change what the Timber Lodge was doing, and then we opened up in June 7 years ago, and it's been quite the ride. And we've had a lot of fun the last almost 5 years doing
I was
that.
going to say, we've had a blast with you. This is one of my favorite places to come in general, and for Harbor Monster fans, it's a great place to come because twofold today. We've got the Harbor Monster show from noon to 1, Monster Weekend Kickoff. Then you've got the watch party. I guess we could go threefold here because the watch party, if you can't make the game, the after parties here are a blast.
Yeah, it's great. Today is perfect because last week was a bit truncated because of Grandma's.
Yeah,
right?
yep.
But today is the whole kit and caboodle kind of deal. And yeah, you guys are all looking good in your monster gear here.
Got to represent.
Yep.
Got to represent. They will be here later. Again, Monster Weekend Kickoff, noon to 1. The Monsters, the Duluth Harbor Monsters, host the Iowa Woo tonight just after 7 at the deck. Let's pack the place. Those games are a big party. I know your staff has been. They've enjoyed them too.
Yeah, well, we have tickets, part of our relationship with them. But, yeah, and then they'll be coming back in here tonight. But I have to tell you, the beer we made for them has been
the Monster Ale.
Unbelievable pop.
Number 50.
Popular.
Get here and order one right now. It's delicious.
It is amazing. There's a big movement around it, which is great. A lot of fun.
Speaking of lots of movement, NHL rosters are making some movement because the draft is going on. I believe the later rounds are starting. Maybe it just started about 15, 20 minutes ago because we had the breaking news of a Bulldog getting selected by the Buffalo Sabres. We could very well see Mr. Max Plant of Hermantown get selected while this show is still on. you're our hockey guy. We got to talk about the draft. I made a wisecrack at the beginning. I said, I'm looking around the brewery. How is there not a Celebrini jersey hanging up already? You're excited.
Yeah, well, I'm really excited about Will Smith as well, which I consider
Getting jiggy with it.
Well, good call.
Like DJ Jazzy Jeff along with that.
Be careful with Will Smith. He tell Dave Hoops to take my name out of your mouth. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, he's like Bedard level, and so he left BU.
Yeah.
And now Macklin's being cagey about it, but he's going to leave BU, and so the Sharks had an amazing draft, but really so did the Wild, which I think everybody listening cares about a lot.
Bouillon
more.
goes the dynamite is my new catchphrase. Zeev Bouillon will be a nice addition to the blue line for the Wild. It's interesting with hockey because so many other sports we talk about fit and positional need. Hockey, I feel like that doesn't have as big of an impact. If you can get a solid defenseman, you do.
Well, that's the thing about San Jose. Macklin was easy. I mean, Celebrini was simple. Sam Dixon, the defenseman, they got him way beyond, way after his predicted spot. Like, they've got a legitimate number one, number two defenseman as well. So as Brian said, best when a team seems to focus in the NHL on best player, and it's a position that they need. That's why San Jose's draft is a 1 overall. But with the guy the Wild picked, their defensive minor leagues has been, trumpeted up till this last year. And now we went from, what are we going to do next to, holy cow, we might have a number one
right.
to go with Faber, which puts Faber in a better position, which then allows Brodin to play longer. If he turns out to be the guy they say is going to be, all of a sudden the Wild's defensive core is good for a long time.
Right. It would be John Carlson and basically every hockey fan's favorite phrase, you build from the back end out. The Wild seem to be doing that successfully.
Yep.
I want to piggyback off something Dave Hoops just said. To use the phrase Bedard-like, can we talk about a bit of a robbery from earlier this week with the Calder going to Bedard and not going to Faber? Yes, I say that with extreme Minnesota bias, but your thoughts?
Well, that is a Minnesota attitude for sure.
It is. Also with the shucks, we lost again mentality, but go ahead.
Well, and the thing is, he could have really been in the conversation for the Norris, but you can't really argue with Quinn getting that. You just can't. You know what I mean? And so the league had to, whether there's a conspiracy or not, I can't complain about it anymore because the Sharks now got their pick. But
right.
Should Bedard have gotten it with that big, long break he was on? Yes, we all think that, Faber should have, but I don't think it. I think that it's just like McDavid getting the Hart. You know what I mean? It's going to happen.
Well, let's go there then. You're giving me good segues here throughout this segment. Mr. Dave Hoops, the proprietor of Hoops Brewing. Conn Smythe went correctly, in my opinion, to Connor McDavid.
Yeah.
Should other leagues adopt that theory where it's not of that series, it's of the playoffs encompassing? Do you like that, or do you think it's silly that the NHL does that and nobody else does?
Well, it's how you get a guy like McDavid an award. That's
it's how you get a losing team an award, really.
Yeah, I will disagree with Bedard. Bedard is they picked the shining star.
Yeah.
Right, they didn't pick the best.
It's sexy
rookie
to watch the goal scorer instead of the most impactful rookie.
Because they picked the rookie who was injured, who played for the worst team in the NHL, and they didn't pick the guy who wasn't injured, played ridiculous minutes for a team that was
in it for the most part.
It's a shiny star.
Well,
guy, and
the other part to
me,
me, Dave Hoops, you mentioned the Norris, and Dave Cook, you might remember I brought this up on a show. I think we did it for Buy or Sell a month ago because the debate was finally settled. It was, will Faber get it or will Bedard get it? And Bedard did. I said what is strange to me is you're right. He could have been in the running. Faber could have for the Norris. But he's not. Why don't they have a best offensive rookie and a best defensive rookie? It's silly to me. Let's say Faber has a slightly better season next year. As a non-rookie, as a second-year player, I bet you he's in the Norris conversation where this year he wasn't. So why can't you do what the NFL does and have an offensive rookie of the year and have a defensive rookie of the year? Then I tell you that Bedard gets one and Faber gets one.
I love your idea, but if you tuned in at all to the NHL award show, which was on,
which I didn't. Full disclosure.
Don't.
Okay.
It's unwatchable TV. It's just they're trying to they kind of made it shticky, and those guys are not actors. They're hockey players. They're like you and me. They're like the most normal professional athletes, right? So these awards are. I agree with you that there should be a defensive rookie. But I don't think the league's looking at it, and the league. Somebody just mentioned that it's not all that popular. Whereas basketball players are making $55 million a year. It's true. There's Minnesota, Massachusetts, and Canada.
Yeah.
Although Florida goes to the finals every year.
We'll have more on that during
from-
Byers, though, as well.
Right.
Yeah, the hockey mecca now that is Florida.
Yeah, long story short, I think hockey is probably the greatest game to watch live, without a doubt. And up here we care and everything else. But I would agree. I think Faber would have been a really good pick, but it would have been giant boo throughout the league. It's just how it is.
I can understand that. So some questions maybe. Should Faber have gotten it? Should Bedard have gotten it? Bedard, of course, did. That question's been answered. It's time for Dave Hoops and myself to answer Dave Cook's lightning questions again.
All right. So one of the questions that Brian and I talked a little bit about this, although he doesn't know that quite yet.
Wait, I don't know what we've talked about? We covered that. That was the presidential debate.
Yeah.
I don't know what was talked about.
So-
Don't go.
Right?
So I'm going to give you a couple of guys, three guys, and I want to know who we've talked about, best players. We've talked about greatest players. I want to talk about most important players in Twins history.
Okay.
Right? And I'm picking three kind of randoms. I want to hear your choice. So first of all, Correa, right? Because his level of importance right now is ridiculous. But I want to add Nelly Cruz and I want to add Greg Gagne as, of those three guys, who do you think were the most important Twins for their team?
Wow, Dave Hoops, I'm going to let you go first, but how about a threesome that you never thought would be mentioned in the same ilk? Because you've got Carlos Correa, otherworldly player, Nelson Cruz, otherworldly player. You'll have Hall of Fame debates on both, and then Greg Gagne. Go ahead.
I don't know. I kind of like the Gagne.
I do too.
Old school for me. Correa's low-hanging fruit. He hasn't been here long enough, and he's just now playing like he's supposed to. It's awesome, right? How about Max Kepler? He's really been making noise until just recently, and I love that guy. But Gagne's old school. He's with the crowd that I was really watching every single minute of every day. So I'm just going to pick him because I'm old.
And I'm going to do similar because I'm not quite as old as Dave Hoops, but generationally I'm close enough. And I was very glued into Greg Gagne's time. And I think you wash out Correa and Nelly Cruz because the role was the same. They were basically to be the team dad, or in some cases the team grandfather, and lead by example and hope the young kids follow. Gagne didn't have to do any of that. Gagne wasn't a leader on that team. I think he was as a captain of an infield and a very solid defender, but you look at the personalities of those teams, and it was Puckett, it was Herbeck, Gaetti on the first one. Gladden, even though I say he gets too much hoopla, he was still a linchpin in both and was there when it counted. He did big things in both postseasons. So Greg Gagne is almost a forgotten guy in that group. But I still think if you look at not having solid shortstop play, I could make one play and say, end of my argument, phantom double play that Lonnie Smith fell for. Yeah. So let's give it to Greg Gagne.
Yeah, I'm still a believer that the most important Twin I've seen in the last 20 years is Nelly Cruz, because he changed an entire outfit of underachievers to all of a sudden look what we were doing.
See, I don't know that he did, because there were enough veteran guys that hit 30 home runs on that team, and that's how they did it. They didn't play fundamental baseball. They were the Bomba Squad for a reason.
They were. All right. So, next question, guys. Viking backup quarterbacks.
Oh, we love them.
Yes, we do.
Always the most popular player on the team.
I want to throw three of them at you, and I'd like to hear your takes. Wade Wilson.
R.I.P.
Jeff George. And Rich Gannon.
Oh, come on.
Who's the best or who's the most important?
In this case, I think it's who's the best.
Okay, go ahead.
But I'm interested in your takes.
Well, no, this is a football question. The best character, the best watching, the best fun is Jeff George.
Yes, it is.
It's obvious.
Dave Hoops and I are making horrendous radio.
Wow.
Dave Hoops is going to give his case, and I'm going to go what he said. So Jeff George, I'll give you a little bit more detailed reason, because Dave Hoops is spot on. The character, the arm like a cannon. I loved when he'd throw a touchdown because he was celebrating with nobody. Did you ever watch his celebration? He turned around and he gave the fist pump to absolutely nobody, and then walked to the sideline. Yeah. But I think Jeff George was almost like a savior, because don't forget, Jeff George's big season was 99, which means that was after 98. 98 is,
the end.
The legacy year of this is the best team we've ever had. And Randall Cunningham was a huge part of that. Randall Cunningham out of the chute the following year, hot garbage.
Yep.
Needed somebody to pick up the pace. Jeff George did. So I'll give it to Jeff George.
There are very few players, and Moss is one of them, that people of that generation say, man, could he come out and, win a game for us? Could Jeff George, with the best arm I've ever seen in the NFL, come back? And even as, 5 years ago, we would say, he is still available.
Right.
Our backups really are bad. Could he?
Elway?
No, Jeff George has the best arm I've ever seen.
Well, I like what you just said, but that's not popular to say. That's great.
That's fine. It's the best quarterback arm I've ever seen. Elway's got a great arm. Don't get me wrong. And those are the two guys. But I saw Jeff George, and you remember the old quarterback challenges?
Oh,
they
yeah.
used to do?
And they hit the moving targets going by? Yeah.
Jeff George hit one of those at 70 yards, and not once. Like, each time, and the ball never got above the ceiling, right? It was just laser beams everywhere.
Well, here's my other problem with the other two choices. I don't totally view them as backup quarterbacks.
Oh, but they were.
They were, but they were also platoon quarterbacks. Because during that 87 playoff run, Wade Wilson and Tommy Kramer were splitting time. For most of what we call the early 90s, Rich Gannon and Sean Salisbury were splitting time.
Yeah.
And it was by choice. It was almost college football in an NFL stadium. Jeff George doesn't play if Cunningham doesn't stink.
And yet, Rich Gannon was the guy everybody wanted to see.
Rich Gannon won an MVP somewhere else.
And he's got a ring.
Yep.
And so, I mean, it's just a real interesting comparison.
You got one more?
I do.
Awesome.
And this one, I wanted to give you guys some superstars to think about. NFC Central, all-time defensive tackles.
Okay.
I'm giving you 3. I'm giving you...
Wait, does the Central mean there's a Tampa Bay player on here?
It certainly does.
Nice.
We are going to go with the greatest defensive tackle I've ever seen, Reggie White. I'm going to go with Hall of Famer Sapp.
Okay.
Warren.
Yep.
Sapp, thank you. And then Minnesota Viking John Randall.
Who's the best?
You have to have one of those 3. Who is it?
I don't know if I can put my bias aside, but I'll try. Dave Hoops, go first.
Well, they're all ridiculously good, and my bias is my bias. But again, let's go with the Jeff George argument. I love the man, Warren Sapp. He's the most fun. He's the most. Reggie White is probably the answer, but I'm going to go with Sapp.
Yeah, so this is going to get interesting because I think Dave Hoop's bias and mine are the same, and it's we love John Randall because he wore the purple. He took Warren Sapp. I'm going to take Reggie White because I need a locker room leader. And not one that makes you try to mimic who he is, because if you tried to do that with John Randall, I don't think you can.
Right.
But I think Reggie White, you can talk about, the minister of defense, because, the minister was a literal term for him. I think he kept his teammates within themselves. And when players don't try to be something they're not, they're that much better. I think if you talk to anybody who played with Reggie White, he was impactful. I think if you talk to people who played with Warren Sapp or John Randall, they just say he had a nonstop motor. There's a difference between being, hair on fire on the field and being a guy you can lean on to make yourself better. And I'll take Reggie White for that reason.
See, I think Reggie White's the second best NFL defender I've ever seen, right, behind LT. That being said...
Lanainian Tomlinson?
Yeah. that being said, the fact that the Vikings could have and should have had Warren Sapp makes him the guy that got away. But of those 3, I mean, if there's money on the table, right, give me John Randall.
Speaking of money on the table, hopefully lots of money going through these tables at Hoops Brewing today. We are live at Hoopla VII. Dave Hoops, tell everybody what Hoopla is because we are just kind of the undercard. We're kicking off the day. You've got all day worth of events, music, etc.
Thank you. And Dave, I want to compliment you quickly about your weekly questions. I enjoy them.
They're amazing, aren't they?
And I never have any, leeway. So I just have to answer. But they're great.
Do you remember the first time we did this?
I have to tell you real quick, it is the only part of the show that we don't share with one another because it takes the fun away from both of us. I have no idea what he's going to ask us, and he has no idea what my buy or sell are. Otherwise, we don't script anything. I'm not that kind of preparation guy, but there's no out of left field at all. Yeah. Go ahead.
Well, I'll come back and do buy and sell.
There you go. We look forward to that. That'll be 11:25.
Yeah, so today we've got the beautiful radio hours here.
Yes.
And then this afternoon we'll have a photo booth coming in here. We'll be selling hot dogs and pretzels and stuff like that. Our neighboring partner business over there is going to sell food all day. We have 2 great bands today. We only have bands a few times a year.
Right.
So at 4:45 we'll have Dance Addict playing all the hits, and right after them we'll have Woodblind, which is Jason Wusso's band, the Wussos out in West End. And then later on we've got the Harbor Monsters and the Harbor Monsters after party. Also, if you want to come down here between 4 and 6 while the music's going, we'll be doing giveaways. A lot of giveaways. A lot of our friends in the area give us things that we get to give to people that show up today. And we're specially pouring pineapple chili ale today.
Oh.
As a kind of a special. We just released Keller Pilsner yesterday, which is our authentic German-style unfiltered lager that, hey, hazy fans, it's hazy.
Here we go.
By design.
That is perfect. So Hoopla VII will be a lot of fun. Come on down. We're getting it started right now, obviously. This show goes until noon, then noon to 1. It's Monster Weekend Kickoff. The Harbor Monsters players and coaches should be in the building as well. We hope that Dave Riles will make his way into the building because he's scheduled to be next as we start hour number 2. Hour number 1 is done. Normally we say goodbye to Dave Hoops at the end of his segment, but this time we'll just say see you later. You'll be back in a segment or two. It's all part of Hoopla here at Hoops Brewing, Northland Sports Page. Brian Prudhomme, Dave Cook. Stick around. We'll be right back.